The scriptures, 2 short verses, both from Judges. And Judges is the book telling about the history of Israel between the death of Joshua and the ministry of Samuel. And this time period is known for its heroes, which the Bible called judges, who ruled the tribes of Israel. And the events in this book follow a certain pattern where the Israelites lived in peace while serving and loving God, and then they forgot God and worshiped idols. And God then punished the Israelites by sending neighboring nations to fight and rule over them. And then the Israelites would turn back to God and ask for forgiveness, which God would forgive them, and save them by sending a judge to help conquer the enemy. And a lot of times these judges, it was miraculous how they conquered the numbers of the attacking nations and how they were able to keep their land. And there was a total of 15 judges or heroes in the book of Judges. So Judges chapter 3, verse 31 is, after Ehud came Shamgar, who was Anna's son. Shamgar struck down 600 Philistines with an animal prod. He too rescued Israel. And then Judges chapter 5, verse 6 says, in the days of Shamgar, who was Anna's son, in the days of Jael, the caravans ceased, the roads were abandoned, travelers took to winding paths. And our next scripture comes from the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 17, verses 38 through 40. Then Saul dressed David in his own gear, putting a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. David strapped his sword on over the armor, but he couldn't walk around well because he had never tried it before. I can't walk in this, David told Saul, because I have never tried it before. So he took them off. David then grabbed his staff and chose 5 smooth stones from the stream bed. He put them in the pocket of his shepherd's bag and with sling in hand went out to Philistine. May God add his blessing to the reading of his word.
We all know our big Bible players, right? We know our Davids and our Samsons and our Samuels and Josephs. But sometimes we forget there are these small players. Shamgar is someone that you don't talk about in Sunday school. He's only got 2 little verses in the whole Bible. But Shamgar plays this huge part. In our first verse, right, we hear where Shamgar falls in all of it, right? He falls between 2 other judges, but that he slays 600 Philistines. And he kills 600 Philistines with, I don't remember what this version says, but a lot of times it's referred to as an ox god. And so I had to look up what this weapon was, because who knows? Anyone know what an ox god is? I had no idea. They say it's this really long, like 8-foot pole, and oftentimes on the ends it's split in half, and one half is like a shovel and the other half is like a spear. I tried to find it online, like a good picture, so I could show it to you. There's no good picture of what this would look like, but it's apparently this primitive farming tool that someone that didn't come from a lot of wealth would have. So Shamgar is this character that isn't well known, is probably an outsider. They don't think he actually was an Israelite because the name Shamgar is not an Israelite name. So he's probably of mixed descent that somehow becomes a judge by killing 600 Philistines in a time where Israel was being invaded. He's a small character. He doesn't show up. We don't have a lineage of where he came from. He just shows up on the scene, kills 600 Philistines, and then we're on to the next person. But that battle in which, or series of battles in which he regained peace for the Israelites is important. The second verse that Kelly read from Judges says that in the time of Shamgar, right, people didn't use the roads. The roads were not safe. They used winding trails instead of the path that was already set before them because it wasn't okay for them to be out there. So they needed someone like Shamgar to come, take his primitive tools, and most likely also his primitive soldiers, and kill the Philistines so that they could regain peace. The second reading from Samuel, I feel like, is important because it shows that God doesn't use always the trained soldier. Right? We know that from the story of David when he's fighting Goliath. He says that he can defeat Goliath, and they put all of the armor that most likely a soldier would wear, and David says, I can't wear this. Right? And so he has to take off the armor and then ends up shooting Goliath with a slingshot and killing him. Right? Shamgar is similar in that way that he's not using a big sword. He's not using what the soldiers would typically use. He's using whatever he had and whatever he probably knew, which was this ox god. This story is important because it shows that God uses us in the way that he needs us. In this story, God needed Shamgar, but not to be a trained soldier, but to use what he had, the skills that he had, which was this tool of this ox god, to bring peace to his people. God took this small part and made it really important. The Bible doesn't just name everyone, right? We talked a little bit about that last week when we were talking about Rahab, that if her name was not important, they wouldn't have put it in there. If Shamgar wasn't important, they wouldn't have put him in there, right? He plays this little bit part. But even the little bit parts are important. Anyone in theater, I used to do a lot of theater when I was in high school, a little bit in college, right? And you always try out for the lead, right? You want the big part. You want the part where you are in complete control of the whole play. And you read the lines, and after the audition, they assign you to a part, and when you're not the lead, you're kind of disappointed. But then you remember that no matter what part you have, your part's important. Because if you don't play your part, the play is not the play that it's supposed to be. There's no small parts. Only small people is what they say, right? Every part is important. Every person has a piece to play. God has a plan for each and every one of us, whatever that looks like. And the thing that it's showing here with Shamgar is that even when it's a small part, even when it seems insignificant, it has a huge impact. God takes this primitive person that's not an Israelite, that really probably shouldn't be a judge because, not of pure descent, and says, I have a big plan for you. You're going to gather your farming friends, and you're going to bring peace to a whole nation that doesn't have peace right now. When you skip a stone into the water, it makes a ripple. Right? And you sometimes forget to look at the ripples. You see the big splash, and you think, oh, that was kind of fun. You forget that there's a lasting effect to what you do. This feat by Shamgar may seem small. These verses in Judges are small. But the impact that he made was huge. When we go through life and bring about positivity, when we go out throughout life and show the light of God to everyone that we meet, we might not know the impact that we're making. We might not be creating lifelong friendships. We might not ever see that person again. But the impact that we're making on that person could be life-giving, life-withstanding, life-changing. I've told you about the girl that my parents saved along the side of the road when she had a flat tire. We've never seen that girl again. I have no idea where that girl is. But I bet that my family had an impact on her in that moment. There was a time where my parents were going to Husker Harvest Days. We were in Columbus, and Laura and I needed to get back. My older sister and I needed to get back to Hay Springs for school. And so my parents found these 2 college students that my mom kind of knew like their parents, and so they thought it was safe. And so they sent us back to Hay Springs with these 2 college kids. And I don't know like what they got from it. Probably nothing, right? There's probably maybe some gas money involved in it, but they were going back to Sharon for school, and so we got in the car with these 2 college kids, and we drove across the state, and the roads were terrible. Like, it was maybe the worst storm that I've ever ridden in. And we get back, and I've never seen them again, but I will always remember that car trip. I will always remember that time when we were in the car and the songs that we sang and the jokes that we made and this forever eternal journey right across the state because they said yes. That they would allow these 2 grade school kids to ride in their car with them. With every interaction that you make, you don't know what or how long you're going to know that person. But if you make sure that every interaction you have with every person you meet is one of the light of God, you're making a lasting impact. Shamgar is not a David. He is not a Samson. He is not an Abraham where we talk about him for chapters and chapters in the Bible. We talk about him for 2 verses. But the impact that he has changes the whole trajectory of the Israelites. They go from a place of persecution to a place of peace, and that's why he's important. So this week, as you go through and you're working through your life, right? Life gets busy. It's crazy. We've got 825 million things that we are always constantly doing. I challenge you, however, to remember our little friend Shamgar. And remember that even when you feel like you have just a small part in whatever play you're in a part of that day, that it has a long-lasting impression, that the ripples of your actions affect not just that moment, but every moment after that. That you bring the light of Christ with you into those interactions. You're probably not slaying 600 Philistines. At least I hope not. but what kind of lasting impact can you make every day? That's our challenge. And although we don't talk about Shamgar in Sunday school, we talk about him today so that we can remember there are no small parts, only small people.